You ever wake up one day and realize your entire life is a lie? That was me last week, sitting in my office with my wife's old laptop, staring at videos that shattered everything I thought I knew about her. My name's Eric, and I'm 35 years old. I live in Denver, work as an accountant, and, until very recently, I thought I had a pretty good life. My wife, Lisa, is 33, and she's in sales for a marketing company. We've been married for 7 years. She's outgoing, beautiful, and the kind of person who always knows the right thing to say. People adore her. I adored her. Lisa's job requires her to travel every couple of months, usually to meet clients or attend conferences. At first, I hated her being gone so much, but over the years, I got used to it. She always came back with stories about the people she met, the deals she closed, and how exhausting her trips were. I'd welcome her home, proud of her for working so hard, and we'd get back to our normal routine. Looking back now, I can't believe how blind I was. The first trip that now sticks out in my memory was back in March. Lisa had to fly to San Diego for a big client meeting. She spent days preparing, shopping for new outfits, getting her nails done, even buying a new suitcase. I teased her, saying she looked like she was packing for a vacation instead of a work trip. She just laughed and kissed me, telling me how important it was to make a good impression. That trip was only 3 days, and when she came back, she was in a great mood. She said everything went perfectly and even hinted that she might get a promotion. We celebrated with dinner at her favorite restaurant, and I didn't think twice when she mentioned staying out late with coworkers after the meeting. The next trip was in May, this time to Chicago for a sales conference. She called me every night like clockwork, but the conversations were short, 5 minutes, maybe 10. The sessions are long, and the networking events are even longer, she'd say. I told her I missed her, and she'd laugh and tell me she couldn't wait to be home. Then there was a trip to Austin in July, another to Miami in August, and finally one to Atlanta in September. Each trip followed the same pattern. She'd leave looking like she was headed to a fashion show, call me just enough to check in, and come home with stories about how exhausting her job was. I didn't question any of it. Why would I? Lisa was my wife. I trusted her completely. But then last week I found the videos. I was using her old laptop because mine was running slow, and I needed to install some software for work. While clearing up storage space, I stumbled across a folder buried deep in her files. It was labeled Work Memories, and at first I thought it was just photos of her with her coworkers or something harmless. The first video stopped me cold. It started with Lisa sitting on the edge of a hotel bed, wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. She was smiling, her cheeks flushed, and there was a glass of wine in her hand. A man, tall, muscular, and covered in tattoos, walked into the frame. They kissed, and things quickly escalated into something I never expected to see. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My hands started shaking, and my mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. Lisa would never cheat on me, right? But as I scrolled through the folder, I realized it wasn't just one video. There were 5. Each one was from a different trip with a different man. The second video was from her trip to Chicago. It was a guy in a suit, clean-cut and polished, who looked like he belonged in a corporate boardroom. The third was from Austin, a younger guy with shaggy hair and a laid-back vibe, like he'd just walked out of a beach bar. The fourth was an older man, maybe in his 50s, from Miami. He looked like someone's dad, but the way Lisa acted around him made me feel sick. The last video was from Atlanta, just a few weeks ago. The guy barely spoke English, but Lisa didn't seem to care. She was laughing and calling him baby, acting like she didn't have a husband waiting for her at home. I didn't know what to do. My first instinct was to confront her, but I didn't. I couldn't. I needed time to think. I made copies of the videos and hid them on a flash drive just in case. That evening, when Lisa came home, she was her usual self, smiling, chatting about her day, and acting like everything was fine. She kissed me hello, asked what I wanted for dinner, and curled up on the couch to watch TV like nothing had happened. I couldn't look at her. I told her I wasn't feeling well and went to bed early. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, wondering how long this had been going on. Did she even feel guilty? Did she ever love me? I knew one thing for sure. My life would never be the same. To be continued. After finding the videos, I didn't sleep for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa laughing, flirting, and betraying me like I was nothing. The worst part? She came home every time, kissed me, and told me she loved me like nothing had happened. I couldn't confront her yet. I wasn't ready. I needed answers first. How long had this been going on? Why did she do it? Was I not enough for her? I started digging. The first thing I did was check her phone. She was asleep when I took it off the nightstand, my heart pounding as I scrolled through her messages. But there was nothing. No suspicious texts, no inappropriate photos, no secret apps. It was clean, too clean. That's when I realized Lisa was smarter than I thought. She knew how to cover her tracks. But I wasn't going to give up that easily. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I checked her purse. That's when I found it, a second phone. It was tucked away at the bottom of her bag, hidden under a pile of receipts and makeup. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. She used the same passcode as her main phone. How predictable. The second phone was a gold mine. There were texts from multiple men, each one with a different name and story. "Can't wait to see you again, Red Heart," one guy wrote. Another one sent her a picture of himself in a gym mirror, flexing his muscles. The conversations weren't long, but they were flirty and intimate. What killed me the most was how easily she switched between them. She had nicknames for them: Babe, Sweetie, Mr. Tall Guy. She talked to them like they were the only men in her life. Meanwhile, I was sitting at home, clueless, thinking I was her one and only. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. At this point, I knew I had enough proof to confront her, but something stopped me. It was almost like I wanted to know just how deep this rabbit hole went. That evening, when she left for a yoga class, I started searching through her social media accounts. Her Instagram looked innocent, pictures of us, her friends, and her work events. But her private messages told a different story. There were DMs from a guy she met in Chicago, asking if she missed him. Another one from her trip to Miami, saying he wished she didn't live so far away. Each message was a slap in the face. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. One of her friends, Megan, had messaged her after the Atlanta trip. Megan was one of Lisa's closest friends, someone I'd always liked and trusted. But in the messages, she wasn't supportive or friendly. "You need to stop this, Lisa," Megan wrote. "Eric doesn't deserve this. You're playing with fire." Lisa's reply: "Mind your own business. If you say anything, I'll make sure you regret it." I sat back, staring at the screen. Megan knew. She knew everything. And Lisa had threatened her into silence. That night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. When Lisa came home, I acted normal at first. We had dinner, talked about our day, and watched TV like we always did. But as we were getting ready for bed, I asked her about the Atlanta trip. "How was it?" I said casually. "Did you get everything done that you needed to?" She barely looked up from her phone. "Yeah, it was fine. Pretty boring, honestly." "Boring." I nodded, pretending to believe her. "You didn't meet anyone interesting?" Her head snapped up. "What do you mean?" I shrugged. "You know, clients, co-workers, anyone you hung out with after work?" She hesitated, just for a second, before forcing a laugh. "No, not really. Just a lot of work stuff." She was lying right to my face. I wanted to scream, to throw the videos in her face, and ask her how she could do this to me. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled and said, "That's good. I'm glad you're staying focused." She smiled back, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to make her pay. The next few days felt like a living nightmare. Every time I looked at Lisa, it was like seeing a stranger. I couldn't stop thinking about the videos, the texts, the lies she'd told me for months. I knew she'd never be able to explain it all away. But I also knew she was a master manipulator. And if I confronted her too soon, she'd twist everything and try to make me the bad guy. I had to be careful. I had to make sure that when I finally did confront her, she would have nowhere to run. I spent hours sitting at my desk, staring at the screen with those videos burned into my mind. I couldn't believe how well she'd hid it all from me. How she'd pretended everything was normal, pretended to be the loving wife, the perfect partner. I had always trusted her completely. I had never suspected her of doing something like this. And yet, here I was, holding all the evidence that she'd been lying, that she'd been betraying me for months. My heart was a tangled mess of anger, hurt, and disgust. I knew I couldn't just let this slide. She needed to understand the full weight of what she'd done to me. I couldn't let her talk her way out of this. That night, when Lisa came home from a business dinner, I was already ready. I had spent hours preparing myself mentally. I had to stay calm. I had to stay in control. "Hey, babe," she greeted me, her voice light, like nothing was wrong. She was wearing that tight black dress I had seen her wear to more than a dozen business dinners and client meetings. She looked just as beautiful as always, but now it only made me feel sick. I had been married to this woman, trusted her, thought she was everything. How could I have been so blind? "Hey," I replied flatly, not returning her smile. I was done with the pleasantries. I had already made up my mind. "What's wrong?" she asked, a slight frown on her face. "You seem off." I said nothing, motioning for her to sit down. I had to do this now while I still had the strength. "We need to talk." Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of nervousness in her expression. "What about?" I didn't answer her. Instead, I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. The first video was already queued up. I hit play. Lisa froze, her eyes glued to the screen. I watched her face as the footage began to play. She looked shocked at first, then confused, then finally guilty. She didn't say anything, just sat there, her lips trembling, as the video played out. I could see her shaking, but she was still trying to keep up the act. This is just some kind of mistake, Eric," she stammered, but her voice was shaky. She was trying so hard to hold it together, but I could see it. She was crumbling. "No mistake," I said coldly. "This is real, Lisa. You know it, and I know it." I clicked to the next video, the one from Chicago. Then another, and another. 5 videos in total. Each one a betrayal. Each one a reminder of everything I had been too blind to see. I didn't look at her when the final video finished playing. I didn't need to see her face. I already knew how she would react. The same way she had every other time: deny, lie, manipulate. But this time, she couldn't deny it. "I didn't do this," she finally cried, her voice rising in panic. "Eric, I swear, you've got to believe me. These videos, these are taken out of context. Someone set me up. This isn't what you think." I looked at her, unblinking. "Out of context? You're going to sit here and tell me these aren't what they look like? That man in San Diego, the guy from Miami, the one in Atlanta. You can't talk your way out of this anymore." She stood up, pacing now, her hands wringing in front of her. "Eric, please. You don't understand. This job, the pressure I was under. I was stressed. I needed a release. It didn't mean anything." She was talking faster now, her words tripping over each other, desperate to make me understand her excuses. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Eric. I love you. I've always loved you. Please, just let me explain." "No," I said flatly. "No more explanations. You've had your chance to explain. You've been lying to me for months, and I'm done." She stepped back, looking like I'd slapped her. "What are you saying? You're just going to throw everything away over this?" Her voice broke as she tried to hold back tears, but I didn't flinch. I had no sympathy left for her. She had crossed a line that I couldn't unsee, couldn't forgive. "You want to know what I'm going to do, Lisa?" I said quietly. "I'm going to make you understand what it feels like to be deceived, to be humiliated. I want you to feel what I felt when I saw those videos. The way my chest tightened, the way I thought I was going to throw up. I want you to feel the full weight of your lies." She stared at me, her mouth slightly open as if she were trying to find the right words. "Eric, no, you don't have to do this. Please. You want me to believe you now? After everything?" I asked. "You want me to just forget all this and pretend nothing happened? I can't do that. Not anymore." She sank onto the couch, her face in her hands now, crying uncontrollably. But it didn't move me. I was beyond that. She had done this to herself. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I don't know where I'm going yet, but I'm leaving. I can't stay here with you. Not after this. You made your choices, and now you're going to live with them." She didn't move, didn't try to stop me. She just kept crying, completely shattered. And honestly, I didn't care. I had tried so hard to make this marriage work. But now, I was done. I grabbed my suitcase, packed a few clothes, and left without saying another word. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind. I thought I was getting my life back on track, but the more I learned, the harder it became to move on. Lisa's betrayal was something I never could have predicted. It wasn't just the fact that she had cheated on me. It was everything else that came with it. The lies, the manipulations, the way she tried to justify her actions. It all made me question everything I'd ever known about her. I spent the next few days bouncing between anger and confusion. I couldn't make sense of any of it. Lisa had always been so perfect on the outside, but now it felt like I didn't even know her. All the years we'd been together seemed like they were built on a foundation of lies. It was impossible to ignore the reality of what had happened. Then, one day, I got a message from Megan, Lisa's best friend. I didn't expect anything from her, honestly. I had always thought she was a little too close to Lisa for comfort, but I never thought she'd be involved in what had been going on behind my back. But here she was reaching out to me. "Eric, we need to talk," the message began. "I can't keep quiet anymore. Lisa's been lying to you, and you need to know the truth. Please, let me explain." I stared at the message for a long time. Megan had always been the supportive friend, the one who acted like she was rooting for us. To hear her say this, especially after all that had happened, threw me off balance. What more could she possibly know? I agreed to meet her the next day at a cafe. It wasn't a place I'd ever been before, somewhere off the beaten path. I didn't want anyone from my circle to see me in such a vulnerable state. When I walked in, Megan was already seated, looking anxious and drained. She didn't look like the same confident person I'd known for years. Her eyes were red, and she was fidgeting with a napkin, clearly nervous about what she was about to say. I sat down without a word, my mind racing with questions. What could she have to say that I didn't already know? She hesitated, taking a deep breath. "Eric, I've been keeping this from you because I was scared of what Lisa would do. She's been lying to you about everything. All those business trips, all the times she's told you she's working late or out of town, they were excuses. She was seeing other men during those times. It's been going on for months." My stomach twisted. Megan wasn't the type to just make things up, and I could tell she wasn't lying. She was scared too, but she was telling me the truth, something I hadn't expected from her. "I know this sounds crazy, but I can't stay silent anymore," Megan continued. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't let Lisa keep getting away with it. She's been seeing different men every time she left town. It wasn't just one or two times. It's been happening over and over again." The words stung. I thought back to all those nights she had been working late or on business trips. All those excuses now seemed so hollow. Megan shifted in her seat, looking around the cafe nervously. "Lisa told me that she wasn't happy with you anymore. She said that you were too predictable, that you were a nice guy, but she was bored of the routine. She didn't want to keep living in a boring relationship." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. She had said that to her best friend? To the person who was supposed to be closest to her? The betrayal felt deeper than just the affairs. It was the way she had dehumanized me, reduced me to nothing more than a boring person she didn't care about. "And Megan," I asked, voice shaking, "did she know I'd find out?" Megan shook her head. "No. She thought you'd never find out. She thought she could keep everything hidden, keep up the act, and you'd never figure it out. She even told me she didn't care about you the same way she used to. She said you didn't excite her anymore." The betrayal in her words was overwhelming. But hearing it from Megan made me feel like the full weight of Lisa's lies had finally hit me. All the things she had said behind my back, things she thought I'd never know, were coming to light. Megan was almost in tears now, clearly feeling the weight of her own guilt. "I'm so sorry, Eric. I wish I could have told you sooner, but I was afraid of what Lisa would do. She's been threatening me, telling me that if I ever said anything, she would ruin me. She said she'd make sure I lost everything, that she'd turn everyone against me." I sat there in silence for a moment, processing everything she'd just told me. Megan had been scared, but now she had found the courage to tell me what I needed to know. Lisa had been playing a game, one I didn't even know I was a part of, and now I had all the pieces. I appreciate you telling me this, Megan, I said, my voice low. But I need you to do one more thing. I need you to tell Lisa that I know. I want her to know that I'm not going to let her get away with this. Megan looked at me with wide eyes. Are you sure? She's going to come after me, Eric. She won't just let this go. You're not going to be able to make her change her mind. I looked her in the eye, my resolve hardening. I don't care what she does. I'm done being her fool. She needs to understand that actions have consequences, and she's not going to walk away unscathed. Megan nodded, relief washing over her. I'll make sure she knows. She's going to lose everything if you go through with this. I left the cafe feeling a mix of anger, betrayal, and something else, something darker. Megan had given me the final piece of the puzzle. Lisa's deception wasn't just about sex. It was about control. She had manipulated everyone around her, including me, and now I was the one holding the power. It wasn't over yet. The storm was coming, and I wasn't going to let her win. After everything, I was done with Lisa. She had lied, cheated, and manipulated me for months. And when I confronted her with the undeniable proof, she had the nerve to twist it around, to blame me for everything. But now, I realized something. She needed to be shown exactly what it meant to betray me like she did. And I wasn't about to just walk away, quietly. I had to make her feel the weight of her actions, just like I had been feeling for so long. When I told her I was leaving, she exploded, just like I knew she would. But instead of letting her scream and beg for me to stay, I decided to do something that would make her regret ever messing with me. I had been thinking about it for days, how to hurt her without doing something that would land me in jail. There was one thing that Lisa always valued more than anything, her reputation. She cared about what people thought of her, how others saw her. It was time to take that from her. Lisa had always been the center of attention. Friends, family, and co-workers all saw her as perfect. Well, I was going to expose her for who she really was. Lisa, I said, my voice cold and steady as she paced back and forth, still furious that I was walking away from the life we'd built. You really don't get it, do you? You think you can just walk away from all of this with no consequences? She stopped in her tracks, staring at me like she wasn't sure what I meant. What are you talking about? You can't just end our marriage like this. You're making a mistake. No, I said, stepping closer. I'm not making a mistake, but you're about to make a huge one. I pulled out my phone and opened the app where I had saved the videos of her and the men she had been seeing. The videos where she smiled, acted like everything was normal, and then slipped away to cheat on me. I'd already seen it all, and now so would she. I could just walk away, I said, but that wouldn't teach you anything. You're going to understand what it feels like to be exposed for who you really are. She looked at me, confusion starting to take over her anger. What are you talking about? What are you going to do? I didn't respond. Instead, I started typing a message. I was going to send those videos, not to her, not to me, but to all her closest friends, her co-workers, the people who had always seen her as the perfect, successful woman. I hit send, and just like that, her life as she knew it was over. Her phone pinged, and the color drained from her face when she looked at it. No, she whispered, her voice trembling. You didn't. Oh, I did, I said with satisfaction. I'm not going to be the fool anymore, Lisa. You wanted excitement, and you wanted to lie to me, to use me as your backup while you played around. Now, the world's going to know exactly what you've been doing behind closed doors. Her face went from shock to horror as she stared at the messages and videos flooding in. She screamed, trying to grab her phone back from my hand, but I stepped out of reach. I didn't care anymore. You've ruined me, Eric, she shrieked, now desperate. You can't do this. You have no idea what you're doing. Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, I said, calm but filled with an anger I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. You ruined me first. You lied. You betrayed me, and you didn't think there would be any consequences. Now, you're going to face them. I turned my back to her, walking toward the door. But she wasn't done yet. Eric, please. Please don't do this. We can fix this, she begged, her voice raw. But I didn't care. I don't need to fix anything, Lisa, I said over my shoulder. You've already broken everything beyond repair. And I'm walking away with what's left of my dignity. I slammed the door behind me as I walked out, leaving her to her meltdown. I don't know what happened to her after that, whether she managed to salvage her reputation or if people started to see her for the person she really was. But I didn't care anymore. What mattered was that I had taken back control of my life, and I had finally made her face the consequences of her actions. The woman who thought she could use people for her own gain was no longer in control. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I had done what needed to be done, and now I was free,